Welcome to another episode of the Pearce Brothers. Today we have a special announcement. So we're here with our dad, Brian Pearce, and he will be joining the channel. So I won't go into too many details, but we'll turn the time over to him and let him talk about some of his interests and his gun interests and some of his background in the gun industry.
Hello, my name is Brian Pearce. I'm not good at this, but my sons talked me into joining their channel, and I'm pleased to be here. Not a lot to tell about myself. I'm many generation rancher. I have family. My grandfather was an original Arizona Ranger. I was born and raised on big ranches in eastern Oregon and western Idaho. We ran about 1,200 head of mother cattle on big desert mountainous type ranches, and it's a way of life. I still run a cow-calf operation today, although not large like we did when I was growing up. Still ride horses. I started shooting when I was 3 years old, my first gun. Got my first rifle when I was 8. I've always had a fascination with guns. I've been a full-time gun writer for the past 26 years. In some cases, I authored between 75 and 100 articles a year. A lot of those geared toward technical stuff. Did a lot of hunting articles early on for Peterson's Hunting, but very few could do the technical stuff that I did, and the editors automatically would always sweep me into the more technical side of guns and ammunition and shooting. I've nonetheless hunted the world. I've been all over, hunted most of the lower 48 states, hunted Alaska many times, Canada, Mexico, Europe, of course, Africa. Had a lot of experience at that. I've taken more than 200 head of big game with a handgun, but I still love good rifles. I have worked as an expert witness, worked as an industry consultant with guns and ammunition. My interest in firearms is very broad. I have a passion for Colt single actions, have many of them. I do enjoy restoring guns. Also like them plain Jane. So some that I've recreated would be a good example would be I've recreated the old Sears gun, which is a very, very rare and desirable, fully engraved Colt's best work for the Sears, Roebuck and Company, fully gold inlaid, mother of pearl grips. This particular one was engraved by Dennis Keyes, a master engraver at Colt and USFA for many years. Good friend of mine. His work is amazing. I've shot, of course, this gun. I shoot everything, in fact. If it doesn't shoot, it goes down the road. This is, we're going to cover a lot with holsters as well. This is very early. The fact is, this is the first George Lawrence number 120 holster, which was designed by Elmer Keith. This was from the Elmer Keith collection. Beautiful floral carving, rawhide lace. We will, here's an interesting revolver. 25 years ago, I commissioned Hamilton Bowen of Bowen Classic Arms to duplicate the original number 5 Keith revolver. This gun, of course, the carved ivory grips were by Paul Persinger. The engraving by Dan Love, very beautiful masterpiece. This isn't just a gun case queen or a safe queen. It's a gun I've used. I've taken mule deer, mountain lion, other big game with it. It's a fabulous shooting gun, and yes, I use it. Here's another one that might be of interest. Here was Black Hawk number 67. It's a 41 Magnum. It was shipped to Elmer Keith by Bill Ruger. Brass backstrap. Elmer used this in the Pacific Valley to shoot a lot of jackrabbits. He loved doing that as a pastime. It's housed in a George Lawrence 120 holster. Another gun that you might find interesting is this is from the Elmer Keith collection. It's one of his Colt single actions in 44 Special. This particular one is a flat top target, made in 1890. Keith returned it to the Colt factory in 1929 and had it converted to 44 Special. It's been featured in his book Six Guns, pages 102 and 103. It's been featured in Guns and Ammo and other books as well. This gun shoots incredibly well, shoots as well as any modern custom revolver. We'll cover a lot on Colts. I favor the originals. Here's a serial number 777, been fully restored, professionally restored, a beautiful gun, good example of an early gun. One that I just recently duplicated is this gun, which is reminiscent of the gun that George Patton carried into New Mexico or into Mexico after Pancho Villa. He earned a couple of notches on the grip at that time. That's an interesting story in itself. This gun's fully silver plated. Beautiful example. This gun was interestingly made in 1916 and was probably just a couple of numbers away from the original Patton gun. That one was probably on the workbench at the same time the George Patton gun was. We'll talk about modern Rugers as well. I'm very much a fan of Ruger revolvers. They're very tough, very durable. Like this stainless Bisley 44 mag, great gun, the medium framed, flat top, the modern one. This one's in 45 Colt and 45 ACP. Very good shooting guns. I appreciate the smaller frame Ruger did on those. We'll discuss custom guns. Here's a gun that was made by Ben Forkin or customized by Ben Forkin for me many, many years ago, an express style 45 Colt with bighorn shape grips, turnbull case coloring, line board, all the right stuff. Here's a number 5 on a Ruger flat top, an old model, octagon barrel. Very good gun. I've taken a lot of game with that gun. Another flat top Blackhawk 357 frame in 44 special. We'll discuss all these in detail. Here's a 500 Linebaugh that my friend John Linebaugh made years and years ago for me. Great shooting gun. I've carried that in Alaska many times. Slept on the ground in the snow with the brown bears fighting nearby. It gives you a little more comfort having a gun with you at all times there. We have a lot to cover. We'll give breakdowns. We'll try to help understand ballistics and cartridges and so forth. I love the classic guns. I still like modern guns. I shoot Smith & Wesson double actions a lot. I enjoy good 1911s, quality 1911s. We'll discuss vintage and modern autoloaders alike. We'll be reviewing a lot of classic guns too, some that you don't see as often as we'd like to see in videos and so forth. We'll probably start off with an early video on the Smith & Wesson triple lock. Here's a rare example with a 4-inch model. Another 4-inch model here. Unfortunately, it was originally nickel, but it's been refinished, unfortunately. But we have 5-inch with what appears to be factory ivory on it. Of course, they're all 44 special, with the exception of one here that is a 45 Colt, and we are going to be getting a letter to determine if it's an original caliber when it left the factory as such. I have a pair of almost consecutive pair of Smith & Wesson triple lock targets that are great shooters. I've shot them both. They both very nice shooting revolvers. Of course, another gun that's been catching a lot of attention with collectors has been the registered magnums. Here's an example, a 4-inch model that went to the Kansas City Police Department. They're very rare in 4-inch barrel. That's a very desirable gun. Of course, the 5-inch was one of the more popular lengths. There's a pair of them. Again, I've shot these guns. I use these guns. I don't beat them up, but I certainly use them and shoot them, and we'll do that. We'll kind of turn the clock back in time. We'll do some 600-yard shooting with them, like the FBI did, and like Elmer Keith did. Here's an 8 3/8-inch gun, which is kind of a rare length. Most of them were 8 3/4 inch. Here's a 6.5-inch with humpback hammer and aftermarket Kearsarge grips on it, which are fairly rare. But yeah, we're gonna have fun doing this. We have of course, we love the old Model 29. This is actually a pre-Model 29, a 5-screw variation, an early gun. I've shot this gun at 600 yards, and it's incredible what it will do. It really surprises people that don't do a lot of long-range shooting. With the right loads, it will. Elmer's famous 600-yard shot, I was able to duplicate that on a deer, on a target deer, but he of course was shooting at a wounded deer, which was quite controversial. But we'll cover modern holsters that are of interest. We will cover vintage holsters, some of the history. we have some really cool ideas that we will be presenting on double action revolvers, and we're not going to ignore the modern stuff. Modern stuff is much cheaper, much less costly, I should say. It is. There's some great guns out there. We'll be covering the 8-shot Model 627s, the 45 ACPs, just a lot of modern Smiths as well that are of interest. The 329 PD, the Model 69, some of those. But yeah, I'm a big fan of Smith & Wessons. I shoot them a lot. I've used them a lot in the field. Great guns. So, as I mentioned, we'll test a lot of classic guns as well that you always kind of wonder how good were they. Give a lot of the history of them. Here's a first year production Browning high power and FN high power. Very interesting gun. Of course, they had the detachable shoulder stock and put them in the holster and away you went, I guess. But kind of interesting. But we're going to do this. Of course, the Luger is an iconic gun as well, often misunderstood, but a very accurate gun. This particular gun is. I've long had a love affair with 1911s. Have many historic guns as well as modern shooters and so forth. Any good gun we will review, regardless of price. And there's a Les Bear. These are a great gun. I've had a number of these over the years. Very accurate. They take a little time to break in, but man, they shoot so well. Of course, Standard Manufacturing is another company that's producing a very great gun, especially for the money. This one's been fitted with aftermarket mammoth ivory grips, but beautifully fit and finished on this gun. Something that's kind of becoming a lost art. Springfield Armory has done a great job on their guns. Forged frames and slides, accurate. They're loaded with all the features, and that's where they come up with the loaded name. Of course, Kimber's well known in the industry. We'll review new Kimbers as they come out, or interesting guns in general. And Colt is still a standard. They're the ones that started it all, and they're any good gun we'll review. But we will review a lot of 1911s. Striker fired pistols, Glock 19, probably the most popular 9mm pistol in the world. It may not be the #1 selling right at this moment, but there's probably been more of them sold than anything else. Another classic one will be the Walther PPK, which of course we know that gained a lot of its fame from the movies, but it also was historical. But we'll talk about these things, review them. Something I didn't mention in my intro is I've written for most of the major magazines at one time or another. I started with the Peterson Group back when Peterson owned the company and was alive. Very enjoyed that man greatly, had a lot of respect for him. Wrote for, of course, Guns and Ammo, Handguns, Peterson's Hunting, Rifle Shooter Magazine, and so forth. Wrote for Outdoor Life at that time as well. Eventually went to work for Wolf Publishing. Even though I've hunted the world, the editors they say, well, anybody can write a hunting story. So they tend to sweep me into the technical side of things. As such, I've developed loads for more than 300 different cartridges. I'm often consulted within the industry about guns and ammunition and so forth. So we'll be presenting in this common loading methods and data, loads, favorite loads at work. We'll mention them as we shoot guns. We'll share our information, our knowledge of things. So I mentioned earlier, love classic Winchesters. Here's a model 1895 and 30 US, which is 30-40 Craig. Great gun. These were a true classic. The ladder rear sight that stood up and let you lob bullets out at over 3,000 yards. The Arizona Rangers were notorious for carrying this. In fact, this was part of the legislation that's what they carry, along with the Colt single action. We'll have fun with some of these old guns. Here's also a very classic Winchester, a model 1892 and 4440, a saddle ring carbine, as you can see. These are very desirable. Hollywood shot the daylights out of these things in the movies. Most of them just got beat to death, and they're actually very hard to find and bring a premium. Again, this is typical configuration, saddle ring, carbine, ladder sight. We'll shoot these and talk about the rifling twists of them and the accuracy. Marlin, oh, they built some great rifles in the day. Here's a fairly rare saddle ring carbine as well. This one's in 3840, and this thing shoots incredibly well. Came out of Texas years ago, and I've always loved the Marlins, loved the closed breech action. Very, very good choices for a gun that's exposed to elements, keeps the dirt and moisture and so forth out. A little more modern, a 1972 vintage, 1895 and 4570. This is probably I've got a couple of dozen Marlin 4570s. This is still my favorite configuration. 22-inch barrel, 2/3 magazine, straight lever. I took one very similar to this to Africa. Shot a lot of game there with it. But these are shooters with the right load. Most of them will shoot inch and a half, 2-inch groups quite easily at 100 yards. This one's outfitted with XS sights, designed by my old friend Ashley Emerson, and great rifles. Here's something a little more modern. This is a Ruger-made Marlin. It's copied SBL, or it is an SBL, excuse me, which was in extremely high demand, and why Ruger brought this out as the first model when they got their tooling back up and going to produce Marlins. These are great rifles. Ruger did an outstanding job with this gun. They didn't struggle with the issues that Remington did when they owned them. Remington made some good guns during that time, but it took them a long time to get it figured out. But these are still in high demand, and Ruger's at capacity. They're building all of those they can take. Another line of guns we'll cover is the Henry. They make some very interesting guns. They're still a little bit based on the Marlin design in that they have the short full lever principle off of a single pivot point. Good rifle. They have some non-traditional features, but they're very popular. And the defense models like this, it's the X models, it's called, available in several calibers. I've tested a number of these. This one I've put maybe a couple thousand rounds through it. It's been pretty flawless. I've not had any real issues with it, but we'll talk about these in detail and give some honest opinions and reviews on these guns. So something else we'll cover is the Uberti and the Winchester Morocco produced Model 73s. These have been around a long time. They started producing them, right in the mid-70s. 73 or 4, I think, was the first year they started producing this rifle. It's been improved as it's gone along, but the cowboy action shooters have just shot the heck out of these, and they're very, very popular rifle for competition shooting, and it still makes them a very viable gun for defense today. And the accuracy of a lot of these is outstanding. Of course, we'll cover the various models, including the 1860 Henry, and this being an 1866 Yellow Boy carbine and 45 Colt. They're fun guns, and they look great. You'll see them commonly in the movies. Okay, so here we've got a Ruger Gunsight Scout rifle. These are great little rifles, very handy. They're probably not the best at any one thing, but they, just as Jeff Cooper intended, they do a lot of things really, really well. And of course, that Ruger action is incredibly strong, durable, reliable. You know, I've seen those things take extreme abuse, and they just keep on working. There's, you know, most people are so focused on accuracy today, they forget about the reliability of guns. And most people in the United States use a gun under fair weather or controlled conditions. But when you go to extreme corners of the world, where you're in rain and snow or freezing rain, or just things, you just begin to see rifles that don't cut the mustard, and this one definitely does. It's just a very rugged, reliable rifle. Something else we'll discuss is classic rifles. This one's a post 64 Model 70 on a classic action, but this was actually a Jack O'Connor tribute rifle. But we'll discuss the pre-64s, post 64 rifles, the pro and cons of each. Of course, here's a pre-64 Model 70 and 375 classic combination in its own right. Very respected rifle around the world. We'll discuss Mauser 98s. Here's a Mauser 98 based gun. It's an FN Mauser, Browning high power, chamber in 338. Has a claw mounts, excuse me, on it. Quick release. This was actually from the Elmer Keith collection. Very intricate rifle with detailed engraving, game scenes, carved stock. Very, very exceptional rifle. And this was actually the first Olympian rifle made. We have this is the Weatherby titanium backcountry. This is in 6.5 RPM. Very interesting rifle. Weatherby's done very well with this combination. Super light. We'll discuss a lot of modern rifles as well as some not so modern. Here's a Nosler 48 carbon fiber and 27 Nosler. Nosler's done very well with these. Very well respected company. And we'll test and review cartridges and have a fun time doing it. Here's one that's a very interesting rifle. It's an Altera Arms rifle in 300 PRC. This gun I've shot personally several times, where it just stacks the bullets in literally a single ragged hole. Very accurate rifle. They're made right here in Boise, Idaho. Very, very precision, over the top precision in many respects. So appreciate you tuning in with us today. We hope you'll come back. We have many other guns that we look forward to reviewing. As you can see, we have a very broad interest in guns and shooting, but we'll be giving reviews on these, and hope to see you soon.